Hello, Gaston County. Welcome to episode number 165 of Gaston's Great, a podcast highlighting some of the great things happening in and around Gaston County. I'm your host, Stephen Long. We're coming to you this week from the international headquarters of GSM Services right here in downtown Gastonia. We have another great guest today. I'm very happy to have my good friend John Forgan on the podcast today, who is the market president for the Charlotte region at First Horizon Bank. However, that's only one of the reasons we want to talk to John today. John is a longtime friend and someone committed, and I can tell you really committed to our local community. I'm looking forward to hearing more about his leadership and community journey. John, it's great to have you on, and welcome to the podcast.
Well, Stephen, thank you for the invite. It's always good to get together with you, and I guess in a public way today. So.
Yes. Yeah, normally it's like in the back rooms and getting things done, right? So, we like to just start with just a simple question for our listeners. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, anything that you'd like to share.
Sure. Moved down here. I'm originally from the Midwest, if really you could say that, from Ohio, from the east side of Cleveland. Moved down here almost 19 years ago. And
so you're now a local?
To some. Had the fortunate opportunity to move to Gaston County. I came down with Wachovia many years ago and didn't know much about Gaston County, but it turned into home. And it's been a great quality of life for myself and family. And I have two daughters, one that just sent off to Auburn about a week and a half ago.
That's right. How's that going?
It's
strange.
I don't think she's missing us as much as we're missing her.
I'm sure I know how that is, yes.
But and I have a younger daughter, and she is 16 at Forest View. Her name is Ellie. So she's starting golf this year. So
okay.
We'll see how that goes.
Nice.
But anyway, it's been a great journey here in Gaston County. Been fortunate to be here and see a lot of the growth, a lot of the change, and a lot of the opportunity as well.
Right. So, well, I appreciate that. And yeah, and John and I have connected, gosh, United Way, was that first probably, or was it before that? I don't remember.
United Way, we were probably involved in the old Gaston Chamber, Gaston Business Association.
Yes. So
I think some Shield events.
Yes. Just a lot of community connections. But kind of before we get into that, just kind of what inspired you, so to speak. I'm not sure that's the right phrase, but to get where you are today, the industry that you're in. What kind of brought you to where you are?
Well, I will say 35 years ago, it was an accident. And the way I was working my way through school up in Cleveland, at Cleveland State, and I needed to make some money. And so I said, well, I'm going to take a job as a part-time teller.
Okay.
At the local downtown branch, back when they were counting a lot of cash, really before debit cards. And I would go in the office about 5:30 in the morning and count cash until about 8:30, 9 o'clock until I went to my first class. And really didn't think much about banking, just thought it was a job. And as I was going through school as a history major, realized this banking thing was sort of cool because you get to help people.
Yeah.
And you get to do some cool things, get to see some stuff. And I ended up going through the management training program at that bank and another bank over a period of time and realized this is really fun. I like it. And have had many different roles within the banking industry and sort of landed on I'm running the markets for the bank now, but really with a commercial lens and business banking and middle market lens as well. So it's been great, but what really got me into it was really about helping people. And I said, at the end of the day, I remember making my first loan, and about 35 years ago, it was for. It sounds crazy when I say it like that because one day you wake up, you're the young guy. The next day you wake up, you're the old guy in the room, right? But my first loan was for $13,658, and it was for a carpet cleaning truck.
Wow.
And I remember it, and I closed the loan. If you remember the old fax machines on the thermal paper?
Oh, yeah.
Printed, then you had to put books on top of them to straighten them out. That was the first loan I ever closed, and I thought I closed like a tower. I thought I was doing a big deal, man.
Paper would come out all curled.
It would come out curled, and blue. It would come out blue. So I learned a lot about banking. Thought I was doing something, working in the branches.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's good to hear. Do you think that kind of helped starting out that way at the frankly, at the bottom, so to speak, in banking helped you even now with what your teams and banking in general has to deal with? And
so working in a number of different roles within the banking industry, started as a teller, ended up assistant manager, running branches, got into business banking, middle market, the commercial lens, and I actually had my broker's license, did all of that as well for a long period of time. What it really helped me understand was everyone serves a role in the bank. Everyone has an important role. There's no role more important than somebody else's. Right. And I think that helped me understand everyone has, it's a bit of it's like a circus. It's a concert, right? We're all working together. But I think I look back now, and it would really help me form and understand a little bit more about the world and understand how I fit into it in a different way. But it really helped understand sense of community. It gave me a lot of root bases that I did not know. You get a lot of that from your family often, but you get sense of community, culture, working together, promotability. How do you work together? All of that comes
Sure.
together into your roles, and it culminates in who you are.
Right. All right. So we love talking about leadership and community, and so along that path, that 35-year journey, maybe even before that, but what leadership lessons stand out? What leadership advice have you been given or seen or learned over that period of time, that kind of something that you fall back on now or something that has stuck with you?
I remember a long time ago, remember my grandfather telling me, there's honor in anything that you do as long as you do it well. And you do the best that you can. So if you're sweeping a broom, you're bringing in grocery carts, no matter, I worked at a grocery store during high school. If you, whatever it is, be the best at it that you could possibly be. Then you are promotable to the next role, right? And
right.
that was something I learned early on before I got into banking. That's a life skill, right? And you have to, and I hope I'm instilling that in my kids, to do the best you possibly can. Your best is good enough, but just make it your best, right? And I think that's helped propel me through my career, and it's given me some life lessons. I think I've had a number of mentors through my career. And I think in the later years of my career, I really, about 13, 14 years ago, I never knew Bob Spencer, and you know Bob.
I do, yeah.
And Bob is a good friend, and I consider him a mentor. I watched the way he went to market, watched the way he did business, and more importantly, I watched the way he interacted with people. And that really helped me, gave me some valuable life lessons when I got here. Because when I got here 19 years ago, I said, I'm going to set the world on fire here. Nobody knows who I am. I'm coming from a place where everybody knows where I'm at. I'm down here. I grew up on steel and factories and foundries, and I got here, and it was textiles and chicken coops and different stuff that I had never didn't know how to lend in. My first loan came when I came down to with Wachovia was 60,000 chicken coops.
Wow.
Had no idea. I was always told if you had a water.
A little different than Cleveland?
Well, if you had a water, if you have to feed it, we don't want it. That's what I was told up in Cleveland. And here that was exactly opposite, because they gave me a portfolio of lumber and commodity-based business and cabbage farms and all kinds of different stuff that I had no idea what I was looking at. So, I guess we talked earlier, but change or die, right? You have to be willing to evolve and understand who you are and how you fit into a community. Something I learned was culture. There was a very different culture up in Cleveland. It was more of it's a hardened culture, I think, where people would, the cycle of business is much quicker, and they don't really care about your family as much. And broad stroke.
I understand. No, I know what you mean.
People care about people up there, but it's different. But it was business is business. We're not going to compartmentalize the personal life. And then I got here, and people want to know where my faith was and where I was going to church, and perhaps we'll do a 2-hour lunch together and understand all that. I didn't understand all that. And it took me a little while. I early on at Wachovia, my pipeline had built. I'm thinking, boy, all these people are going to do business with me. These people were just being nice to me. So I booked none of that business. About 6 months, and I realized, boy, I'm doing something materially wrong. So looked at myself and said, okay, what are these people really saying to me? Right, and it helped me understand. So it really helped me grow as a person to realize culture makes a difference. Yeah,
I mean, ultimately though, isn't whether it's Cleveland or here or wherever, isn't ultimately to just building relationships,
right,
and listening and working like what you described. I mean, if you came down here and the book of business was different, as you described, So you got to put the work in to understand all that, right? And
My goodness,
yeah,
I did not know the difference between hardwood and pine, and
yeah,
I was signing documents, driving into the woods in an ATV, and I was doing stuff that I never would have had to do where I came from.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, because that's not something I would have thought about, frankly, with what we do here, and of course, growing up here. So
your business looks a lot more like stuff that I worked with.
Understood.
In Cleveland, but those were far and few between 19 years ago, right?
Yeah, right.
I didn't understand a millimile. I didn't understand the textile industry. I didn't understand ticking. I didn't understand any of that. Yeah. And it was real important that I did, because it was such a big piece of the economy here in the region.
Sure. I mean, but even we've seen that even change in the last 19 years for lots of different reasons. Right. So you're kind of on this same timeline, this same journey. I'm lucky to have the personal connection where I've seen you involved in so many community things. So how did that evolve? How did community, evolve to be so important to you? From my perspective, how does it play in your work and your mission?
It really, I was involved in community before I moved down here, but not to the extent that I was over the past years. I was involved in the chambers and things like that, United Ways. But what I saw the opportunity when I came down here, and I looked and said, the way I'm going to become and understand this community is to get involved. Yeah, and we didn't know anybody when we moved here. It was pretty hard to understand the first year or so. So the first thing we did was went and bought a family membership at the Shield Museum. And we got to meet a bunch of great people. And to this day, I've been on the board 13 years. I've never left. So, but
they pull you in.
They pull you in. You could tell Ann I said that, but I've enjoyed it. But to me, it's one of the linchpins in the community. It's so important. But it helped me understand how things are tied together, right?
And it also, that specifically, is something very unique for our community.
Yeah, and I recognize that it's a diamond, right? It's a diamond. Yeah, yeah. It's not in the rough. It's so made, and it continues to reinvent itself. And then I realized it was important to understand the business community, so I got involved early on in the chambers, both early on Montcross and Gaston Chamber, and then over the years really spent a lot of time helping to get involved with the Gaston Chamber, with you and your brother and different folks in the community, that we got to take this in a different direction if we're going to change or die, right?
Yeah.
And that's sort of the mantra. How do we become relevant? How do we add value and impact in the community? So really have had a lot of experience with that and change, and proud to see where it's gone, but it's continuing to evolve.
Right.
I was off the board for a few years, and I'm back on the board in the same conversation. We're having different conversations about the next strategy. What is the next big thing that we need to focus on? So what do our business owners need? What do the leaders in the community need? Now we're talking about things. We had no traction for redevelopment and opportunity and thinking about what Main Street's going to look like. And that was a distant, something way in the future we were going to talk about. That stuff's here now.
Sure it is, yeah.
So, I think we can help lead a path that, development for the sake of development's not always good. Let's have the right development.
Yeah, what's the plan? Yeah.
So what's the plan? So I think there's some opportunity with that. And I would say I've served on the boards of the YMCA and the Shield and visitor boards of the Botanical Gardens, a lot of different things. And I've had great perspective, and it's helped. What I found out early in my career, somebody told me this at Wachovia: you should triangulate everything that you do to understand how you fit in and what's the true reality of what's going on.
Right.
And sometimes when I sit on 3 different nonprofit boards and I can't talk about any of the things that are going on individually in those boards, it helps me form a better opinion about, well, they're all doing the same thing, right? They're all coming at it from the same lens, or they're going this way and they're going this way. Why aren't these folks talking to each other? And I think I felt that a little bit when we were on the journey together on United Way,
right.
And the Great Reset. I call it the Great Reset, right?
Yeah.
So, but we had an opportunity to. My year was the year I rolled into COVID,
yes,
and that was a tough year. But we had to really help a lot of our partners and understand how they fit in the community. I learned a lot more about how those partners serve this community than I ever would have found out if COVID didn't happen.
Correct.
So if there was a positive, that was a positive.
Yeah. That was just a strange time.
Yes.
We don't talk about that here anymore, do we?
Right.
How about, professionally, community, something stand out when you look back that you're really proud of being involved with, or something that occurred that you were involved with or touched, something that just, I was fortunate to be involved with that, or proud that this occurred?
Yeah, I mean, everyone has things that they're say, well, this is my flag, right? These are some of the things I've done. I always felt, looking at my kids, as long as I leave it better than I got it, right? How can I make it a little bit better? It doesn't have to be 100% better. It could be 5% better. Things that I got involved in early on in the charter school, Piedmont Charter School was early on. I was, during the financial crisis, I put my career on the line to say, we need to do that deal with the Winn-Dixie, the old Winn-Dixie, that's the secondary one. The second was the high school before the new high school, right?
Right.
That helped leapfrog them and catapult them into the next big thing. And that was exciting to be part of. And I remember sitting at because of the commercial, sitting at some board meetings with Joel and looking around like, well, we're all in here, right? So, but I think that was something that made a difference to me, being involved grassroots with the Shield for a lot of development. And even more so, we just finished up a campaign raise. I was the chair of the campaign, and Elizabeth and I worked hand in hand, but she really did a lot of the heavy lifting, but we were able to raise all the money for the dinosaur exhibit that's coming on, the paleo exhibit that's coming on here in the next 6-8 months. So really good things like that, but also being along, adding curriculum-based things at the Botanical Gardens with the heyday when the Kimbrell Gardens and all of that were just coming online. We added curriculum and did some stuff. So I was part early on the African American Museum with that, and we had a great. So I was myself and Anthony were some of the first people to trailblaze on thinking we need this. There's needs for some of this stuff. So I sort of look. I like to come in and try to observe. I'd love to come in sometimes and there'd be no problems, but it never works out that way. There's always some big thing. I would tell you probably for 3 years, I was asked to serve on the board at Kramer Mountain, and I walked into that, and that was a bit of a hornet's nest for me. And I was able to, with the board's help and the community's help, work and secure a purchase agreement and the financing to get that club back online, it's so important for Cramerton, right?
Sure,
it's important for the region. So, I mean, there's room in this community for a Gaston Country Club and a Kramer Mountain. They're two different types of clubs, but, the community really needed a hand up to get to where we needed to be, and it felt really good and validating this past April when we got that done. So there are things like that. I'm nowhere near done. I got a lot to do, but I do think talking to people like Jim Marasso and other people like that, to me the next big thing is how do we continue to be there and support a lot of the critical care agencies, but how do we get the fine arts and other programming up? I've always supported the sports programs because my kids have been involved in sporting events and things like in basketball and a lot of other things. To me, there's always money there for that, right? But the fine arts is something where I think we lack in the community, and I think there's a lot of upside opportunity.
Sure. And
we've failed. We've jump-started and stopped and started a number of times. I think something where I would like to see, at the end of the day, that I don't know if we'll solve the housing problem here in the community, but maybe we can make a bit of a difference to try to make some change. So I think there are a lot of things. I look at myself, and I'm 53, and I'll be 54 in a month or two, and I'm thinking I've got 20 years worth of stuff to do that I just want to keep going. Yeah. And it's exciting. And I always use the reference from John, the little phrase from John Lowry, if not you, then who, right? And he says, and it always sticks with me for many years. It's stuck with me that you got to step up. And
right.
So, and this is not a validating moment for you or your brother or your family, but you guys always do that. And I watch, we had these conversations about who are the families and who are the people and what do you want your legacy to be. Someone else should draw your legacy. You shouldn't create your own. You do the work.
Yeah.
Let someone else craft what that's going to be. And,
right.
And, but, and at the end of the day, professionally, one day I woke up and I was one of 50 bankers in the market here. Next day I woke up, I'm last man standing, and they're all looking at me like I'm the old guy. There's 3 of us left, right? So I looked at that, and I'm like, wow, there's an opportunity to help some of the newer bankers get up. I can't do this forever.
Yeah.
Help them chart a path of how you do business, how do you build relationships. What I found is some of the newer folks in the banking industry, they're starting to understand that maybe the baby boomers and Gen X had right because relationship matters.
Yeah. Do you find that technology is hindering some of that relationship building, like we see it so many times in communications and in the banking industry, hindering some of those relationships because everything can be done so automated and quick, and you lose some of that. Is that fair?
That is fair because things are moving faster. If you remember when technology was coming in, someday we'll just email. We won't have to fax, and then you were faxing, emailing, calling. You were doing it in 3 or 4 different mediums. Now you're doing it through AI. So I do see a lot more. It's moving faster every day, but I'm working hard, and I do this in some of the boards. I'm gonna pick up the phone.
Yeah.
I see the emails go back and forth 18 times, and I'm like. And then you keep getting included. We could have solved this with 1 6-minute phone call somewhere. So I think a lot of businesses are lost in the technology land. Yeah. I mean so print media doesn't work or billboards don't work. I'm telling you they do. I mean because all those forms work. So helping people understand that technology is a tool. It's not going to replace people. It's not meant to replace people. It's meant to augment what the people do and make them faster.
Yeah, so you just, in about, 5 minutes, you just covered a lot of topics.
Sorry.
Well, I'm going to try to bring that together. What I heard, too, was a lot of the things that you're involved with and proud of or has impacted you or in our community. It's a lot of the tangible things, right? It's, the museum, like the Paleo Project, community, the Piedmont Charter School. Mm-hmm. These things that you can tangibly see in the community. A lot of things that I know you and I are involved with, we don't always see the results. Mm-hmm. Like some of the United Way stuff, frankly, unless you get out.
We sit in the room with strategic plans, and we're like, we hope this works.
Yeah, well, yeah, we know it does, but you just don't see those minute by minute. You don't see the building, as an example, right?
Right.
Or so that's I do like that. The YMCA, right, that we were involved with to get. And that's a tangible thing that we can see day to day how it serves the community, right? And when you're making loans to organizations like that, so you can see these results. I just think that's helpful when the community can see these things happening.
Well, you could see example. We've been on a journey with Gaston Aquatics for some time, and we support. I think there's room in the community for everybody. We support the Warlick Y and the Stowe, and but we saw a huge opportunity to help support Gaston Aquatics. It was a journey, basically telling it, tough loving, and talking to Donna and folks, you're $2 million short. You need to raise more money. I don't want to be in the pool business. Yeah. I want to lend you money, you pay it back, and let's build a partnership and see how we can augment this. Yeah. And sometimes you might stall a project for a year or two to get to where you need to be to get to a tipping point where it's going to work. To see them breaking ground and see that all happening is pretty darn cool.
Sure. Yeah, and I've got both a business and personal, connection there, where my daughter's working. So,
sure.
So yeah, it's been a good journey and a long journey for that one too, right? There's so many things like that. I think you may have already answered this question by what you just talked about when we were talking about relationships, but your kind of community business leadership success over time, is it the specific question I like to ask is what has been a key factor there? Is it that relationship building? Or is there something else that you would that sticks out to you?
I think it's part of that. I think one thing I always tell my bankers on my team, and they look like I'm crazy. They don't look. I always think they look at me like I'm a smart wizard, and that's not the case. So they look at me in another way, right?
Well, yeah.
But like, who's that crazy old guy? But
you stayed at Holiday Inn Express last night.
Exactly. but I think it's if you show, you go. And if you show up and are relevant, and you go to these breakfasts and go to dinners and meet people and do the extra thing, this banking is not a 40-hour-a-week job. Most jobs are not 40-hour-a-week jobs. And if you can find the dance and weave them into your life, that it doesn't always work out that way. But when you're working 55, 60 hours a week and 30 or 40 of it is around people that you want to be around, I think that makes a difference. Sure. And so, but I think character counts. I will tell you, in all my years in banking, I will stand by anything. I will tell you if this is not going to work, or when you're telling me this is the best widget, but I've seen 3 more widgets that look just like your widgets, I owe it to you to tell you that, right?
Oh, absolutely.
That's the way you're a partner, right? I could, or I'm commodity based. That's our secret sauce. We call that our power play as a bank. Now, when we think about one of the 5 flags, what makes us different than somebody else is it's coming with a consultation of here's what we see, and I need to be able to sleep at night. And so early on in my career, I had a choice sort of where I wanted to make. Do I want to go down the leadership commercial role and work on commercial real estate, C&I business, core operating business? Or do I want to be a broker? And I realized early that I didn't have the tolerance to be a financial planner broker, right? Because the difference was if a financial planner broker, they're taking all my advice, and the market moves. I can't control what the market moves down 30%, and their portfolio's down 30%, and they're calling me. I couldn't sleep at night. I had all my life, I couldn't sleep at night. And we did well at it because being personable, not to toot my own horn, but I mean, I think my tolerance was, okay, I'm going to help this person build a business plan for commercial. They have to execute on their own plan. There might be some outside factors, but they can control their own destiny, and we can actively talk about it. I don't know what's going to happen with the stock in Europe. I don't know that, and I can't control that. And frankly, I don't have all that institutional knowledge, right? I just can't. Maybe AI would help me with that now, but at the end of the day, I wanted to be out there to help people. And I think you go sit in the stands, and I sat in the stands with you with our kids playing basketball from Cramerton Middle to Forest View and watching our kids do things. But then I'm in the stands with a bunch of my other customers, right?
Yeah.
And we're all together, and we're all talking, we're all cheering on one common cause together. You build a bond with people, you get involved with boosters, you do these extra things. You're not doing it for business, you're doing it because it's the right thing to do, and you're doing it for your kids and family. It just benefits. It comes back to you tenfold.
Yeah.
I've never said, boy, I'm glad I didn't I'm so mad I volunteered for this. I don't think I've ever said that. You usually walk away and find a positive in what you do.
Yeah, so we have a big thing here. You mentioned it, but we can only control what we can control. And I don't know if it's technology or just the way society has changed. I have so many interactions, and it seems like so many people are trying to control everything. And you can, obviously. I mean, there's things you can, but so many things are out of our control. I like thinking about what can we do here in Gaston County,
right?
Locally with GSM and with United Way and with Rotary and with whatever, my church or whatever. I mean, all these things that we're involved with and we touch. And also, you mentioned a big one, in my opinion, which doesn't get enough press. You just show up and do the thing. So much of it is about that. Just show up and do the thing. Do something.
So I told Rachel this morning, I had the fortunate opportunity to go to the dentist today.
Oh, congratulations.
It was great. Dr. Nason was great. But I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I had a choice not to go do this today, right?
Yeah.
And I said, well, we're going to go in for the fun here today, and we're going to come through. But life is about choices.
Yeah.
It's just, if I get something through to my kids or people I work with, is you're going to make wrong choices, but make a choice. Right? Stand by it. Leaders stand by their decisions. Don't make the large fatal error, but you're going to I make mistakes every day.
Yeah.
It's mistakes we can correct, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I find myself, the beauty about this is I find something new to look at. I love going on appointments with the bankers and going talking to customers and people because I find out things I never knew. My mind, I realized early on, doesn't work. I can't tell you how a piece of sheet metal coils a different way, or why can't it go this way. I can't tell you that, and it's pretty cool. Or I'll go into a plant and see them making this widget that's the back of a cap of a pen. I'm like, well, that's cool. But to them, it's everything.
Yeah.
It's everything. And to see that is sort of cool to see. I get jazzed about seeing different people with a passion for the next big thing, right?
Yeah, so, so many things, too, are incremental. I think we live in a world, too, we want everything we want to go from zero to the greatest success, or we want that project to be done tomorrow. But my experience is that the real progress happens in incremental things over time with the things that, like you're talking about, you're involved with. Most of that stuff doesn't happen overnight, right?
No.
And so that's another one. That's what I mean when I say show up and do the thing, right? Just you got to keep at it. You got to keep at it. And then you can look back and you'll see the progress that's been made. So
sometimes you need to do it again, right? So example would be this was sort of funny. About a month and a half ago, I was sitting in the SHIELD meeting, and we were talking about the planetarium. And they were talking, well, it's time. We need to get a new, whatever the middle planetarium thing is that shows the picture.
The projector?
The projector. New projector.
But it's a little more than a projector.
It's a little more than that. And I said, well, didn't we just buy one? And they go, yeah, John, 12 years ago when you were on the board, you voted for it. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Well,
like, I guess
yeah.
it's time for a new one, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it blew my mind a little bit because sometimes you're replacing, I've been long enough in the cycle. I'm replacing stuff that we already replaced once.
Right.
So I'm on the maintenance CapEx plan with these boards, right?
That's
so,
funny. Yeah. Yeah. And that's a technology item that does change seems like every 3 or 4 years, right? Especially computers and things like that. If it's 3 or 4 years old, it's out of date.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they told us. Like
that's wild.
You can expect 4 years of useful life on that stuff.
So professional, community-wise, what's next for you, your industry, or what's the next big thing you see? You kind of mentioned a couple of things already from the community standpoint, but just what's next for John and what you're involved with?
Sure. This, I think, really the next couple years. What's important to me is get the girls launched into college, get their life started, come out with a job, right? Okay, so I think that's a good thing, and get their lives, making sure they're in a good place, so I can start next phase of my life. But as I said, I'm nowhere near done. I want to pick my spots, figure out where I can get involved, make a difference. Professionally, I think there's a lot going on great at the bank. We're putting a new hub headquarters in South End, and that's all going to happen in first quarter. So we're branding a new building tower there. So there's some really good stuff going on that I've never had the benefit of being part of in my career. So there's a lot more to come with that. So I think there's a lot of runway professionally, but personally, I think, where can I pick my spots? Where can I make the most impact the last 10, 15 years of my career? Where can I make a difference? And I always tell the bankers I still run at a pretty high cadence. I still go on more appointments. You got to lead by example, and I know you and Joel do that as well. You got to show people that you're willing to put in the lift. Yeah. You'll do the lift, right? And so I think that's fun. But if I can help some bankers develop professionally, if I could help some of these nonprofits maybe advance the ball some, I was part of the Habitat regionalism look through Charlotte, but I look and people are like, there's good and bad on both sides. There's good and bad on both sides of that, but I was looking at, we can build 3 homes a year, or we can build 30 or 40 a year with the potential. How can we make some systemic change and go from one of the smallest habitats to go to the second largest habitat in the country? How could we be part of that?
Right.
So there are things like that where I think we need to look and retain make sure we still have our identity and who we are, right? Because I think that runs deep here in this community. It's really important that you don't forget that. But, and there are people in this community who will not let you forget that either, right? So, but I think it's really important that you do that. And then you embrace some of the change, right? We have to embrace across the river, right? In my mind, there's a lot of upside opportunity. Will it get done? And that's a case where will that all be done during my career? Probably not. You and I will be fishing somewhere by the time this stuff's all done. Yeah. But we've got to at least help them think about some of this stuff, that whether it stops and starts, but we have some major infrastructure issues that they're going to have to get solved. And
sure. Yeah.
So, I mean, those are things, I can only do my little part, right? And it's very egocentric. I can make this big, massive change. I could do my little parts, right? But if everyone does a little part, everyone does 1%, all of a sudden you're like halfway there, right? And I think that's this community, the beauty of this community, and a lot of communities. I had the fortunate opportunity of covering all Western North Carolina throughout my career and most of South Carolina. This community is very unique relative, maybe only to 1 or 2 other communities I've even seen across North Carolina and South Carolina, that there's this pride of where you came from and who you are, and people are going to help each other stand up. We are fortunate to have a lot of philanthropy still left in the community, and we're also very fortunate to have a lot of big business still left in the community, that a lot of companies have been vacuumed out, a lot of changes happened. So I think we need to continue to embrace all that, and I want to see what's the next big thing here. There's a lot of cool stuff that's happening. I mean, just since I came over to your building, there's a ton of change going on over here. Yeah. I think for the better. There's going to be stops and starts in this community, and there's going to be political changes, and you just got to be above all that.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I love that concept of you mentioned that there may be things that we're involved with now that we may not personally see, the end fruits of that. But I love that old saying is, what's the best time to the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
I mean,
so you might not see what happens with it.
Well, and I think one important thing is I want to make sure from a perspective of the next generation coming in has a sense of community and has a sense of giving. I think is pretty important from a faith-based perspective, from a community-based perspective, and frankly, there's a need for that. There's a bit of a vacuum that's going on. And I think we owe it to ourselves to help create future leaders, because the people, the yous and me's of the world, at some point we do slow down, right?
Yeah,
I'm not there yet, but
yeah,
but we do slow down, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's some opportunity. I see a number of good rising stars in the community, and we just got to embrace them.
Yeah, and help them understand what we view as important, but it may be different for them later, as long as community is part of that. I guess is maybe one way I would view that.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I'm going off all these tangents.
No, this is good, John. This is terrific. So before we're going to land the plane here with a few final questions that I'd like to ask, but is there anything I haven't asked that I should have? I mean, we'll give you an opportunity before we finish up if you're interested in sharing how people can find more information about the bank or anything that you'd like to share there. But something I haven't asked or something you want to make sure you share before we finish up?
No, I would just say, I guess the only thing I would say is in the community, it's been a pleasure being part of this community for all these years. I didn't understand it when I got here. I probably don't understand it 100% today, but building friendships with people like you and other folks in the community, I think there's a core of really good people here that just really care. And that is not everywhere. I think a lot of people care, but a lot of it's lip service. People put their money where their mouth is or their time. And I think that your organization, I look in this community, I think there's 20 or 30 organizations that stand tall. Yeah, and those are people I want, I always tell my kids, hang around the right people. I try to hang around the right people, right? Because good things happen when you hang around people of character. Right. And so I would urge folks to do two things, and if they're younger in their career, is hang around the right people, triangulate, don't listen to everything one person says. There's truth in between. Everyone has perspective, but there's truth between two or three different people. You could find a common answer.
Yeah, a good example would be like the Habitat situation. Mm-hmm. I've been involved with enough boards that I knew that the Habitat board had more information than most people. Mm-hmm. So when I know an organization like Habitat puts a good board together, a good group of people who care about Gaston County, they're making a decision they think is best for Habitat of Gaston with the information they have. But so many people don't view it that way. And right. if I over the years, if I hadn't been involved with other organizations and boards, I'd probably be like, what are they doing?
And why are they regionalizing? Yeah. Well, it's not regional. There's a bigger commitment than there's ever been.
It's like committees and other things, and like our Rotary Club. There's a lot of committees. I trust the committee group that I don't need to be involved. They're going to do what what's best for the community and the Rotary Club. So I guess that's something.
They're in the room. They're in the room.
But when I was younger, getting into my professional career, I had zero concept or perspective of that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. I had zero perspective of what it meant to support the community. Now I'm a total homer for Gaston County.
I rolled off the board of the Kramer Mountain 2 months ago. I did not call anybody for 60 days. And the reason I did that is I wanted them to form their own opinions. They could call me. Yeah, I didn't hear a lot.
Yeah, I got you.
I wanted them to form their own opinions, to launch on their own. We did the best we possibly could, but I want people to make it their little red wagon now.
Right.
It's their opportunity to do something. And, I'm always going to be here to help people. I want to help people. It's fun to help people. And it's selfish maybe on my part. I want to help people because I feel good, a little bit better about, what we're doing then. So.
All right, so a couple of questions I'd like to ask. John will finish up. And you may have already answered this question, so it's okay if you repeat yourself. But remember, this is a podcast about Gaston County, our area, community, why it's so great. So how would you answer that question? Why would you say Gaston County is such a great place?
Well, I think a couple things probably. The people. I love the sense of community in all these little communities. It's so cool. A lot of regional places do not have this anymore. A lot of communities don't have these small little towns. Yeah, they've all been raised. The towns have gone.
Yeah.
And we are so fortunate to have
or the big town is sprawled. Pull them all, suck them all in.
I think that, and I think the upside potential, the next 20, 25 years of Gaston County we have a chance to do something that hasn't been done in 50 years here. Let's take this to the next level. It's going to take a lot of heavy lifting and a lot of people rowing together, because finally across the river, you couldn't dream of investment across the river like from Charlotte 10 years ago. Now people are actively looking, well, this should be our first location as a Whataburger, or we should have this development.
That's a good one. That's a good example. Yeah.
I mean, 10 years ago,
who would have thought, Gaston County.
we couldn't get a Starbucks here, right? I called when I got here to ask where the Starbucks was, and they told me there was a plan in a couple of years maybe to open one. So that's a funny story, because I had a Starbucks on every corner in Cleveland. I got here like, well, we're going to go there. Well, in the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to have one, right? So I'm like, okay, well.
That's funny. Yeah. That's a good point.
But anyway, I do think it's about people, and I do think the sense of community through there's a lot of great amenities that this community has, from the parks, the pocket parks, Crowder's Mountain, the golf courses. There's a lot of good infrastructure here that you just do not have other places. A lot of it's because the Community Foundation has helped step up. A lot of philanthropic folks, and a lot of the founding mill families and people have really stepped up and put their money where their mouth is and said, we can change this stuff. We can make a difference. So I do think there's more. I'm concerned about the future, like where's the next big philanthropic gift coming from? But
sure,
I do think we are very fortunate.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so remember these last couple of questions, we're kind of looking out from a perspective. We might have some young listeners out there, some young bankers, some young business people getting into their professional careers. Well, like my children, my 2 oldest are grown and gone. They're in their professional careers. So knowing what you know now, John, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
What would I give myself?
Knowing what you know now,
Knowing what I know now,
what would you tell
is the world is not black and white. We live in the gray, and the world lives in the gray. And I'm never 100% right, and I'm never 100% wrong. And you gotta embrace people's differing opinions. And I think early on in my career, I would be like, that's not the way this should go. Well, that's what I think, right? Other people don't think. So I think embracing that. I also think meet and talk to as many people as you can. There is value in any human you talk to. Yes. I can learn something from just about anybody I talk to. Probably to my detriment, because my kids go crazy when we're going places and we're at a farmer's market and I'm talking to 1,000 people. Yeah. But I learned a lot. I learned a lot about crops and stuff. I'm never going to plant zucchini, but if I wanted to plant it and do well with it, I know how now.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But those type of things, and I would say, the last thing I would say is stay focused and driven. Meaning when they plopped me down, when I moved down here 19 years ago, my office was in Shelby. I did not know one human being on Lafayette. And so my assistant at the time, I had a list of 400 names. And I said, I want to see all of these people. I want to meet them all in 1 year. I said, when I get through them all, I want to cut the list to 200 of the people that I have to be part of. And people, you have to have a process. I'm not saying that's your process, but everyone has to have a process of how they go to market and meet people, right? So I really thought very long and hard to meet with the right people, and thought about whether I do business with them now, that makes me a better person, right? Gives me perspective on how they fit into the puzzle, and they know things that every time I get together with you for lunch or something, I find out something or a little tidbit that maybe I didn't know, or if I'm talking to Joel, or I find out something, or Chris Peak or somebody, I'm like, wow, I didn't think about it that way.
Yeah.
I don't have the corner on good ideas, right?
Asking questions, listening, and a little critical thinking goes a long way.
Right. I mean, we look a lot smarter when we do that, right?
Absolutely. So your point, that's interesting. Growing up, my dad, we would go places, and I remember just, to your point, I would always be like, Dad, can we go anywhere without you knowing somebody? You know what? And my kids do the same thing to me now. And now I'm like, I'm like, no, I hope we don't go anywhere where
I want to know,
especially here locally, because no matter where we go, I'm typically I'm going to run into somebody
that you know,
we know, and I'm going to want to spend some time talking to them. Yes.
Well, I mean, and the other thing is, my kids go crazy driving in the car, especially when they were younger. I'm slow rolling 5 miles an hour to see what project's going on and how does that fit in. And before I wasn't in the know on it. Now I know that project, and do I want to be part of that, and who's part of that. And so now it's different, because they would go crazy. I mean, I'm going on a 10 miles an hour on a 50. Well, that's something big going on. We need to understand what's going on there, right? Yeah. How that fits into the community. So, I think the thirst for knowledge. If I say one last thing about all that is, you have to enjoy what you do. You know, you could have jobs and you could have careers. And I encourage everyone I work with, I want you here because I want you to have a career and mobility and do whatever you want within your organization. But if it's a job, let's call it a job because you're passing through and you're doing something else. That's okay, but let's just call it that.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I mean, but I really want to. I really think young professionals really need to focus on where they want to be, what's going to make them happy, and how could they make money doing it, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, money's not a bad word.
Yeah.
You mentioned a mentor earlier. I think you mentioned Bob Spencer. Any other people or individuals or something that someone has made an impact on you professionally from a leadership standpoint, or anything that you look back on your career? I think mentoring is something that's super important, and I think looking out for that can be good.
I've had a number of people in my career steer me in the right direction of, hey, you're not looking at it through the right lens. I go back a lot of times to my grandfather or my dad. I think I've learned a lot of life lessons from my dad. He's been in the sales arena for a long time, but and not anymore. But I guess he's always selling, but I'll always be closing, right? ABC, right? Yeah. So, but I learned a lot from him on perspective of people, and that he helped me understand the value in everybody, whether they have no money or they have money or whatever they are. You never judge a book by their cover. Some of my most wealthy clients have holes in their jeans, and they walk up to the door, and you're like, this person has $300 million. You don't know. Yeah. You don't know who you're talking to.
I learned that the hard way in residential sales when I was traveling around our Gaston and the 4 or 5 surrounding counties, doing in-home residential sales. You learn a lot about that right there.
I learned a little.
When I was young, I was judging everybody all the time.
I learned it firsthand with my dad. We went and bought an Oldsmobile 88 when I was a kid. He got off of work. He was working for the state, and he wasn't dirty, but he was dirty from work. But he washed his hands. He cleaned up. And he had the money in his pocket to go buy it. It was like $5,800 for a new Oldsmobile. He had dream on now, right?
Yeah.
Brome, the Brome package, right? Italian people from the neighborhood. So we went down to the dealership, and the salesman, steered my dad to the back of the lot for a cheap car because he thought he couldn't afford it. And it embarrassed my dad because I was with him. And my dad said, okay, thank you. We're not buying this clunker. We went. We drove almost an hour and a half to another Oldsmobile dealership. We bought the new Oldsmobile dealership.
Wow.
And he drove back to the old dealership, and he beeped the horn. He goes, I had the money to buy the car.
That's a good lesson, isn't it? Yeah.
And it blew my mind. Like, he missed the sale because he was reading the room the wrong way. The guy was reading it wrong. And, so, I mean, that was just a personal experience. And the only other mentors I would have, I've had, and I know time is short, but I would think,
that's good.
I think, at the end of the day, I talked about Bob a little bit, but I've had other banking. I had a gentleman by the name of Bob Hagfield that I was assistant manager at a branch that had been 32 years ago.
Wow.
And he says, we're going to give you a chance to be a manager, but we're going to give you this office in Chesterland, Ohio, and it's in the middle of the snow belt. He goes, I'm going to test you. And I said, what's the test? Well, the test was periodically we get 3 feet of snow on a night, and the office is still open. Will you show up, and will you be the one to open the doors?
Oh, wow.
And it was a test. And so I think his point was life is always full of tests. And I had another test. I remembered that when I was there, and then I spent a lot of years at Fifth Third when I was there going through some of their business program, and they put me in a branch in an inner city office, and they worked me 21 straight days because our branches were open on Saturdays and Sundays as a floater.
That's interesting. Okay.
At the end of 21 days, they were waiting to see if I would quit. On the 22nd day, they called me into the office and gave me my first branch.
Wow.
And said, we wanted to see how much we could push you and what you would take and how much you cared about the company.
I'm not sure how that would fly in 2025.
It probably would not fly today, but there was a test going on that I did not know about.
Understood.
So anyway.
And you passed.
I guess. Yeah, 35 years later, I made it, right?
Yeah,
So
well, you've made it now because this is your peak moment on the Gaston's Great podcast, right?
this is it. I've hit everything's downhill from here, man. So-
All right, well, last question I'd like to ask John is, if you could have coffee or drink or whatever with one historical person, who would it be and why?
It's really interesting. It could be anybody political.
Oh, what? Yeah.
Political, non-political.
We have no rules on
You
Gaston's
have no
Great.
rules. Well, I've always been a huge World War II buff.
Yeah, me too.
And I would love to understand, to have a cup of coffee with Roosevelt and see what was going on.
Yeah.
What were the decisions being made, and
how the gravity of those decisions.
gravity was different. There was no period. We get into wars and things like that now. There's a pretty logical outcome that we're going to overpower somebody. That was in question.
Correct. Yeah, that's a great point.
And I think, as a great society, what it was so bold. It was so bold. It was a world. It was the whole world was at war. So to understand that, how you could carry that on your shoulders.
Yeah.
And you look at him and Churchill and the whole group and Stalin and all them, whatever it is, those people were both human beings.
Yeah, that's interesting. No, that's a good one.
So
yeah, I'm a big fan of reading about Roosevelt, and Churchill, especially during that time period, was just some wild.
That was real leadership,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, wild stuff. I'm trying to remember the name of the book that I read within the last year and a half or so. I'm not going to remember the name because it was an unusual name, but it was basically about Churchill's the first 12 months that he was prime minister during, from the time from Dunkirk and a year later.
Sure.
It's just a really interesting. I'll share it with you if I can think of. It was a really good read. But so, John, this has been great. I appreciate your time. Just before we close this one out, I've kind of already asked this, but any last words for our listeners?
I would just say, embrace Gaston County. Be positive about Gaston County.
Yeah.
This is your home. Be happy where you're at, and let's make it better together. And just thank you to Steven and GSM. Thank you to Rachel, who's doing a great job today. I don't know if she's on camera today, but she's doing a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah, she's fantastic.
But thank you for the opportunity. This is great.
Well,
and thank you for your friendship.
Well, I appreciate that, John. Again, I'll just say again, I appreciate your commitment and all you do for our community. You're as involved as anyone I know. And so, again, I appreciate you're behind a lot of good things that are happening here in our community. And I'm going to finish off with my book recommendation. Actually, I think I mentioned it in the last week's episode during our conversation. But occasionally I will go back and reread a book that made a real impact on me. It's probably been 10 years since I read this one, but this is a classic from Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And if you're to John's point in discussion about relationships, I think for me this might be the book to read to learn about how to develop good relationships with others. And I also find that books like this, 10 years later, it means something different to me than the first 2 or 3 times I read. This is one of the few books I've read 3 or 4 times probably. And so again, that's just a book that I would encourage anybody personally, professionally. It's one of those books that if you take the lesson from it, I think it can really help you out. So there's your one for your reading list, Rachel. Okay. All right. So to our listeners out there, thanks so much for taking the time to listen to today's episode. Please continue to spread the word if you can about the podcast. And don't hesitate to contact us here at our email address, which is podcast@gastonsgreat.com. We are always looking for suggestions for podcast topics and guests. You can find the podcast and subscribe at the website, gastonsgreat.com, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. And please follow us on all our social media platforms. Thanks again to John for being our guest today. Gaston's Great is produced and brought to you by Rachel Cowart from GSM Services. I am your host, Stephen Long. Thanks again for hanging out with us, and please keep coming back to hear more reasons why Gaston's great.